Hello. Is this working? I think it's working. Just making sure my microphone is actually picking me up. If any of you guys is hearing me, please say something on the chat. And if you're not hearing me, please say something on the chat if you see my lips moving and nothing else happening. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna bring this a bit further up. Okay, yeah, I think that's better. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I'm just waiting for literally to do the countdown, but I thought I'll show my face beforehand for those of you who may not have been on a tour with me today or before in general. So I am Lily. I am the person that runs Revolution Tours, and today we will be walking through Southampton. It's just gonna be literally a quick walk of Southampton to give you a very first sort of introduction to the city, in case you don't know it from before, and hopefully you will like it and you will want to know some more. I have some more in-depth tours that are gonna be happening in the next couple of days, but this is literally just like a first meeting point, if you see what I mean. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a couple of disclaimers before I start going. My gimbal is having a bit of a funny day today, so if you suddenly start hearing a beeping noise, it's not self-destructing. It's just telling me that there is something wrong, and I'll need to readjust it. And sometimes it doesn't rotate very well with the hay go up. So again, it may be a bit of a moment or two for the camera to go vertical to horizontal if we need to go that way. But I'll give you a heads up in any case. And yeah, so I'm literally about to go. If some of you are not hearing me properly, please say something or do something. And if not, I'll get going in a second. And if you are hearing me and someone could just give me a thumbs up, just for reassurance more than anything else, that would be great. But yeah, I'm just gonna bring this up. Thank you, Christina, very kind of you. I'm just gonna bring this up to protect the microphone a bit more, and then I'm gonna flip the camera and start showing you around Southampton. Okie dokie, awesome. Well, we are starting in one of the parks of Southampton. This is Isaac Park, and I'll show you in a moment why it's called Isaac Park. But I thought, first of all, I'll point out some of our sites. That noise that you're hearing there is coming very obviously from our clock tower. That's our town hall. It's one of the main buildings in the city. It's where we also have our art gallery right there. That's just the entrance, and our library. And on the other side, just there on the corner, you may be able to see that glass over there, is the entrance to our museum, where we actually hold the Titanic exhibition as well. I won't be talking an awful lot about the Titanic today, but for those of you interested, we do have a couple of tours that engage with the Titanic directly coming up, because the Titanic actually departed from Southampton, and Southampton was heavily impacted by its tragedy. And that's the reason why we have a whole exhibition dedicated to it in here. Well, now that you have a general view of this area, I'm gonna move the camera slowly to the left, and I'm gonna introduce you to the man that's given us the name of Isaac Park. It's there. You see that statue here on our left? Well, that man is called Isaac Watts. Now, for those of you that are into engineering, no, it's not Isaac Watts, the engineer. He is actually, he is actually one of the most important preachers in the history of British psalms and hymns. He is the person that actually wrote Joy to the World. So if you guys go to church, or if you sing that when you are on holiday on Christmas with your family or something like that, this is the man that made it possible. He was actually born here, even though he spent the vast majority of his lifetime in London. But because his family was from Southampton, he kept on coming back down south for health treatments and for spa moments. But that's Isaac Watts. My gimbal is being a little bit temperamental, guys, so I'm sorry about that. It's been a little bit rude. But anyway, that's Isaac Watts, and that's the reason why the park is named after that. The park is actually a Victorian park, so before that over here, it was literally just cement and gravel. But in the 19th century, they decided to give to give more green spaces to the city. And we're actually very lucky here in Southampton. We have 3 huge parks that go in a row throughout the city centre. And we will be seeing them in full Wednesday next week in our Parks and Monuments tour. But today we're just gonna go to the edge of the park, and then we're gonna walk down into the high street to see some of the most iconic areas of the city. Now we are just walking to another one of the monuments that is in here, where I actually want to genuinely have a real moment with you guys, because I'm sure you're all very aware of the state of the world right now. I mean, how couldn't you be aware of what's happening in Ukraine? And this is one of our war memorials. Now, of course, none of the victims of the Ukraine would be recognized by a British memorial, but in solidarity with my Ukrainian colleagues, with whom I've been speaking quite a lot over the last 24 hours, I thought it would be quite a nice gesture if we stopped here for a moment and we actually, think about our actions as people, and what we're doing and what we can do to support them. I'm very grateful that you're all with me here today. But honestly, if you can spare some time to go and see some of the stuff that my Ukrainian colleagues are doing, you would generally be making such a difference. Right, well, we are in front of the cenotaph. Now, if any of you have been to London, you may be familiar with the cenotaph in Whitehall. Well, this is actually the blueprint for that cenotaph. So without our cenotaph here in Southampton, we wouldn't have cenotaph in Whitehall in London. It was actually built by Sir Edward Lutyens, who is mostly known for all of his war memorials here in the UK. And it's all done with Portland stone. For those of you who are not local, Portland stone comes down from Dorset. Dorset is the county next to Hampshire, so it's not very far away from here. But that's what the stone is. Now, this has been here since literally 1918, so it was done right after the war. So I'm sure you will not be surprised to see that there is some damage, not just from, birds, moss, whatever, but in this part of Southampton, we get quite a lot of wind, even when we don't have a storm or anything. And even though you may be able to see some of the names here, I'll show you the next side, because on that side, they are completely eroded. But in this monument, they essentially carved all of the names for the people that died in the First World War originally, and then they kept on adding names for the Second World and the other wars to come since then. Now, because of the damage that the monument has received, we also have these green panels here. There you go. And they are done with glass, and they were done mostly because the memorial by 2010 was already seriously in such shambles. When we go around, I'll show you the full damage. But it was supposed to be a general war memorial, and then it became a memorial for everyone that was part of the British forces that died in service, no matter what. So the names kept on adding up, and they decided to put every single name in here. It also didn't help that when they originally commissioned the memorial, they forgot about 200 names from victims that they just hadn't been recognized. So they relied on people and locals to come and tell them, my son's name isn't there, or my cousin's name isn't there. So they took this time to actually right some wrongs and put all of the names of these people. And they've done something really clever, which is, as you can see, there are some QR codes there. And if you actually have a QR code reader in your phone, you can actually bring up any of the names on that list and find out whatever details we know about these people, which is really cool. And the fact that we can access history like that on our phones today, I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. But yeah, this is the other side of the memorial. As you can see, we still have some poppies from Remembrance Day, which takes place every single year in the UK on the 11th of November. And on the other side, I'm gonna show you the damage of the deterioration. We also have some beautiful light right now. I thought it was gonna be a lot darker, so I'm gonna use it while we can. But yeah, I don't know if you can see here, there is already some erosion. A lot of those names are hardly visible, even though they've been recarved. And if we go farther out, it's the same story. So this is the reason why they decided to put those glass panels all around it. Okay, well, now that we've seen the memorials, we're going to start walking down into the city center. We have one huge high street here that goes from the parks all the way down to the shopping area, which is actually what Southampton is most well known for. I think a lot of people come here to just essentially do some shopping. We have a few malls and whatnot. And they don't actually realize that we have a lot of history in Southampton. But one of the reasons for that is because, well, a lot of our monuments and sort of big important sites got completely destroyed during the Second World War. I think it's on Sunday, I'll be doing a tour of one of the sites that is more representative of that. It's a little bit harrowing, so if you're a little bit delicate, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you like that type of story, it's a very interesting link between the past and the present. So I would very much recommend you that you join me for that. But yes, Southampton was bombed to death, literally. We had over 30,000 bombs falling on Southampton during the Second World War. And I'm just talking of projectile bombs. I'm not even talking about incendiary bombs, of which we had just as many, if not more. So a lot of our old past was completely destroyed then. So we're trying really hard to preserve what we have, which admittedly is not a lot, but what has survived is actually really important. Right, well, these murals that you see here, these street art pieces, are part of a cultural agenda from the city to try and revitalize some spaces that have been a little bit neglected. And they all have been done by local artists, many of which are also students of the university. This is actually a university building. I don't know if you can see it there. Solent University. We have two universities here in Southampton, Southampton University and Solent University. The University of Southampton is one of the top 20 in the country. It's part of the Russell Group. For those of you who may not be from the UK, the Russell Group is, essentially the biggest academic body in here. They own, as to say, like the most important universities, or what people consider to be the most important universities, and they get the vast majority of the funding for that purpose. Solent University is what used to be called a polytechnic university, but in fact, in this day and age, it is one of the top 10 universities for media studies, creative writing, and anything that has to do with film production in the country. So it's really surpassed its fame as just a sort of random polytechnic that didn't have much to contribute. So we take our universities very seriously in here. Now, I'm gonna stop here on the right for just a moment. We do have the sun hitting on us, so I'm gonna try not to blind you guys. But this is the back of the hall. It is now part of the O2 Guildhall Enterprises, so it serves as a music venue and whatnot. But as you can see, we have quite a lot of people doing skating in here, and it's because of these benches, like that one that you see there. They got installed not long ago. They've been here maybe 5 years at most, and well, you know, people get creative. We don't have a skate park here in Southampton that is very central, so the younger generation sort of reclaimed it as the skating area of the city. And every single day, unless it's raining, and even when it's raining, you can see people doing all sorts of amazing stuff there with bikes and skates every single day. So it's a very colorful area. Right, we're still in above Bar Street. I don't know if you can see, but there's lots of commerces here, lots of bars, lots of food. We're literally just passing by Turtle Bay, which is a Caribbean restaurant, and I'm getting the smell of it, and it's making me really hungry. So if any of you have any snacks at hand, please have a snack for me, because it's very, very, very savory, the smell that I'm having. And yes, I will try and bring it up a little bit. Sorry, my gimbal is normally a lot more stable than this, but I don't know what's happening with it today. Every time I sort of push the arrow to go up, it sort of jitters. So I'll try and keep my arm a bit steadier in here. But yeah, I don't know if here on the left you see those streetlights on that red car. that is still part of that big park where we were just a few moments ago. So when I was saying that the park literally goes around the city center, I wasn't joking. It carries on all the way down there, and then it ends by one of the monuments that we're going to stop in just a moment. So I'll remind you of that in just a second. But we're going to cross in here. Now, just to warn you, we're literally about to enter the main bit of the high street, so it could get really busy very quickly. So we're going to see lots of cars, lots of people, but we're going to avoid as much of the hassle as possible. But, it's Friday night. Southampton is, like I said, a very big student hub. So Fridays are one of the busiest times to visit the city overall. And we usually have cruise ships that come every single Friday and bring a lot of tourists. And in case you didn't know, guys, Southampton is actually the number one cruise capital of the UK and essentially of Europe. We receive over 250 ship calls a year just for cruises, and a lot more for cargo ships. So that's actually where the city makes a lot of the money and what it makes a lot of its fame. Unfortunately, because not everyone is aware, like you guys today, of what we have to offer here in Southampton. They sort of just come for the shopping and for the eating, and they go really quickly without exploring much more of the city or of its history, which is a shame because, like I said, there is a lot more hidden in here, which you guys are going to see in a moment, and it's really worthwhile discovering. But, well, little by little, you're also going to see a lot of construction work here and there, and that's because Southampton is currently going through a big stage of renovation, just like those murals that we saw just a few moments ago. The city is putting through for the bid of City of Culture for 2025, and they're trying to renovate some of the areas, to help them win the bid, essentially. But it's not going terribly well, I must say, which is a shame. But it's because, well, unfortunately, the local authority here doesn't really care much about the city and its cultural venues, which is a real shame. We have a real problem with that type of stuff here in the UK as of late. I don't know if you've heard about Liverpool losing its UNESCO heritage. So it's a bit eerie for those of us who work in the cultural world, but oh well, these things happen. Linda, I'm not hearing a British accent. May I ask how you came to live in England? Yes, of course, Linda. So I originally come from a small town in the north of Spain, which is called Santander, like the bank. It's literally like a straight line down from where Southampton is on the coast. So I came here in 2009 from Santander to come and do my studies in Winchester. That's where I originally moved. That's where I was living for a long time. I went to the University of Winchester to study my BA in History and Medieval Studies. Then I did my MA in Historical Studies, and then I recently obtained my PhD in History. So that's why I came here. And I've been living in Southampton since 2017 because as much as Winchester is absolutely lovely and adorable, and I'll be doing a tour of Winchester very soon, it's a very small town. Everything literally closes at like 4. So it can be a little bit isolating, particularly when you're away from home, not having any friends around in a small town. It can be quite lonely. So I moved to Southampton to, join with a lot of my friends who were living here. There's a lot more stuff, as you can see, going on in the city. And that's why I moved to Southampton. But I was a bit reluctant because, before I moved here and I actually understood what was happening in this city, I was one of those people who thought, Southampton is just a big mall. And boy, was I wrong. I was very, very wrong. But obviously, it's hard when you come from a place like Winchester that was literally the ancient capital of the kingdom to come to a place that in the Middle Ages barely had 25,000 inhabitants. Literally, Southampton only became a city, like de facto, with a title city in the 60s. So it's a little bit of a day and night. Oh, thank you, Linda. It's very kind of you. I'm a historian and a tour guide, and I've been a proper tour guide for perhaps longer than I've been a historian with a PhD. So tour guiding is really, really my passion, because I sincerely believe that, historians can be so dry sometimes. We have that horrible sort of way of seeing things as ours instead of everyone's. And I just wanted everybody to be part of the conversation. So that's why I decided that, my call as a historian was to be a tour guide. And here you can see, this is the entrance to West Quay. This is our huge department store. And normally, as you can hear, we have someone here basking or something. It's a very sort of animated area. We've had actually some pretty big names and some pretty important artists. Yeah, we had a boy. Well, sorry, they weren't a boy band. That wouldn't be the right thing. We have a keyboardist, a drummer, and a singer that actually went to like Britain's Got Talent from here, and they sometimes play. So it's very animated. If you come in the weekend, particularly Saturday, Sunday, this city is bursting with noises and food and all sorts of things. We're incredibly lucky in Southampton to have such a varied culture. Like, you can almost find any type of food from everywhere in the world. So it's great. And as you can see, guys, here is someone else about to do their performance. And as you can see, people know this. You see, look at the crowds. Like, people know this happens. So like, some people literally just come to hang out in the middle of the day to see what's going on in town and just hope that they catch some music. But yeah, I'm actually trying to get to the part that is behind this lady. We have market today. So on Friday, every single Friday, we have a small market here. It's not very big. It used to be a lot bigger before the pandemic, as you guys can imagine. That sort of changed things a little. And it used to be about more traditional stuff, but lately it's just mostly like local food and a few other trinkets. But this used to be like the entire length of the high street that you've just walked all the way to the West Quay entrance. But right now it's kind of just, it's seen better days. Let's just say it that way. Right. Well, this big building in front of us is the Bargate. And I will tell you a bit more about the history of the Bargate in just a moment. We're going to go actually underneath that arch. But I don't know if you guys realize that there is like this red fence over here where it says History Uncovered. Well, you see, that used to be all a department store, another one, a much older one. And they put it all down to just modernize it, right? And when they started digging, they found all of the remains of the city wall and the medieval city, because where we are standing right now, in medieval times, we would be foreigners. We wouldn't be part of Southampton. Everything that you've seen up until now wouldn't be Southampton back in the Middle Ages. So we are literally about to get through into the medieval city of Southampton. Right. The Bargate would have been that main entrance that would have determined whether you were in or out. And in case that you guys didn't know, these big gates weren't just a fortification. They were also a great way of taxing people. So underneath these archways, there would have been a tax office or a tax collector somewhere, and they would be making sure that you paid your dues as you came into Southampton. Now, I'm sure you can see the vaulting. All of that is still original, and it is Gothic. So it's not the oldest, but it's definitely old enough. And the reason why I wanted to come here is to show you the prettier side of the Bargate, maybe, but also to show you how big and chunky it is, so you can appreciate the importance of the defense walls of the city of Southampton. Right. Sorry for the gimbal's harsh maneuver there. It's generally not liking me today. Right, well, this is the Bargate, guys, from the back. And you can see a statue there in the middle, and the windows, all of that for a little while would have actually been part of the prisons here in Southampton. That would have been the prison all the way up to the 17th century when they changed it a bit farther down in the city to a different part of the wall. Actually, we're not going to get that far today, but I will show you it some other time. It's quite traditional in medieval times and through history to move the gaols and the prison back and forth. But you know, this is where we used to hold it for a little bit. It was a good way, I guess you could say, to keep prisoners here and have public executions here, just to make an example, you know, of criminals and the things that were happening in the city. Now, you see this huge gap that we have there. Right next to this building, there is more of the city walls that we're gonna see literally just now, but they were actually cut off in the mid 20th century. I think it was actually in the 60s, 63, if I'm correct, to make way for the tram. Now, this line that you see here, there would have been a tram line, but there is nothing. There is no traffic, as you can see, at all. All of this is actually cut off to the public and to any kind of traffic. It's just pedestrian. But that's the reason why they cut off a big chunk of the wall, just to let the tram come through. And I'm going to show you now how thick this actually is, and why they needed to actually make some urban redevelopment and let the tram go by, because this medieval fortification was pretty chunky. Well, you see, this is the edge, and that's the bit where they cut it off, which is not insignificant. As you can see, it's a very, very big and thick wall. And I'll explain in just a moment, when we see the bigger part of the wall, why this wall had to be so thick and so prominent. But we're just gonna walk over there in just a moment. There is no map. Are you close to the coastline here? Yes, we are in fact very, very close. Southampton is literally a port. We're bang in the middle of the south of England, and right in front of us on the coastline, you can see the Isle of Wight. And in fact, the fact that the Isle of Wight is right there is so important for the history of Southampton, because as you can see, the city walls start here. I'll tell you about them in a moment, but I'll finish explaining this bit about the Isle of Wight. Now, because the Isle of Wight is right in front of Southampton, we have a fantastic double tide, which is a very rare phenomenon for most places. Now, because of that double tide and the fact that Southampton is a natural harbour itself, it meant that it was able to let in ships that were much larger than many other ports and harbours in the UK, which meant very early on, roughly since we think that in Roman times we already had some evidence of trading here, but nothing significantly major. But at least since Norman times, since the time of William the Conqueror in 1066, this was spotted as the perfect place to set up a good trading port. And that's actually the primary reason why Southampton became an important place in the south of England. Not important enough to become a city until the 60s, but very important for the dynamics of the economy and international politics of the country. Now, before I show you the walls, I just wanted to show you, this is the other side of West Quay. It connects there with what you've seen just now, and it goes all the way past those buildings into reclaimed land. So right now we're already starting to be walking on reclaimed land. So we always have this sort of loom of the environment and what we're doing to the planet, present in the city. But yeah, and the reason why we know it's reclaimed land, because these walls, which you may think may have been just, for the fortification of the city, they were actually naval defenses as well, because the sea level came to here. Now, why did they bother making, a huge city wall here if you already have the sea as a fortification, right? Very few places would normally fortify something that is already defended by the sea. Well, the thing is, I'm sure you may be all familiar with the 100 Years' War. It was a very important conflict in the Middle Ages between England and France. Now, Southampton was not of particularly great importance, like I said, for anything other than trade, but Winchester was. Like I said, it used to be the ancient capital of the kingdom, and even after it wasn't the capital of the kingdom anymore, it still held a lot of strategic and political value. So during the 100 Years' War, the French were doing lots of coastal raid lines, trying to essentially figure out what was the easiest way to get into mainland. And when they realized how close Southampton was to Winchester and how important Winchester was for the nation, they started attacking us. So after a couple of attacks, the city decided that they needed to improve their defenses, and that's the reason why they built this huge wall. Now, I'm going to show you, we're not going to go all the way to the end of the wall because it's actually quite a long wall, but it's quite long. Now, I don't know if you can see, we're going to walk there, but if you can see those cars and all of that at the back, the wall's still going on and on and on and on. So it's one of the best preserved medieval walls here in the UK. And it could potentially have a claim to the best preserved and one of the longest piece of medieval wall in the UK. However, because of that bit with the tram that cut off through the Bargate and a few housing estates and whatnot, we've lost that right to urban development. But unfortunately, these things happen, right, guys? You know, when we don't always think about our heritage when we are building, when we're constructing new things. And unfortunately, sometimes we lose part of our patrimony because of this, which is a real shame, but it happens. This is a natural development of any city, just a sincere pain for historians like me and for people like you, who I'm sure would love it, all being beautifully preserved, like, look at this. But unfortunately, that's not the case the vast majority of the time. Now, we can actually walk the city walls. I don't know if you see, that's a staircase that is an entrance point, and there is a few more around there. But they are doing actually some renovations there, and it's a little bit precarious at the moment. It's been raining and whatnot, so I don't particularly want to take you up there today and potentially have an accident. But when the weather is improving, I will do a proper walk of the city walls, and we will have a deep conversation about the medieval history of Southampton, because it is really interesting and fascinating. Like, Southampton was actually the port that collected all of the troops that Henry V marched into Agincourt, and a lot of people don't know that. So it's a conversation that I'm really, really looking forward to have with you guys as a medieval historian that I am. So it will be certainly for another day, but there we go. Right, well, we are approaching what is going to be probably the last stop on our tour, but I wanted to show you this area because even though it's modern, it is very important for the cruise. Now, I don't know if you can see this glass building here on our right there as the sunset is coming through. It's actually very pretty. That is the office for Carnival UK. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, Carnival is actually the biggest, or well, one of the biggest cruise providers, in not just in the UK but in the world. So that's what I actually mean. We're a very important and busy port, and that's where we get the vast majority of our tourists and the vast majority of our commerce from, because of those cruise lines are literally a lifeline, and that's actually what saved Southampton after the war, guys. Like I said, I'll be having more tours about this, but after Southampton got completely obliterated to rubble during the Second World War, we had some very, very hard times. And it was the port and the cruises, but more importantly, the ocean liners, right, the cargo ships, that really helped come to the rescue, and that made the city what it is today. And the reason why the city eventually gained the right to be a city, not just a town. Now, very quickly, I'm just gonna stop here. This is the Castle Watergate. So the actual castle, not just fortress for the city, would have been somewhere around there. If you see that tall building right behind the wall, we reckon it would have been somewhere there. We do actually have a street called Castle Street, but we don't have any other remains. Oh, sorry guys, this gimbal seriously is giving me today a really hard time. I do apologize. But yeah, we've not had very much luck in finding the actual remains of the castle itself. So we know roughly what it was, and we do everything that we can to find it, but we are really not succeeding. And I don't know if you can see here on the left, but there is some attempts there to carry on digging and finding some more answers about the past of this castle and of these defense walls. Right. Well, we are now gonna walk into an area that you're gonna notice is a lot quieter here. It's because this is mostly residential. We are getting close to the water here, so I mean I can smell it. Obviously you can't, because unfortunately, well, technology is not that advanced. But literally the last tree that you have here at the end of the road, that is very much where the water starts. Now we're not gonna go there today. We're gonna go to one of the city jewels that is very much hidden and that not a lot of people know about, but it's very important for us. And that's where we will stop. But before, I want to show you the only real acknowledgement that the Titanic was a thing here. You see, because the tragedy was so big in Southampton, a lot of businesses and people in general just don't. They just don't like using the name of the Titanic for any type of marketing, any type of commerce, all right? When I mean the tragedy was big and important, I mean that at the time the Titanic departed and then the tragedy happened, pretty much 90% of the crew was from Southampton, and the vast majority of them died. So it was actually said at the time that about every single street in the city had lost someone. And that someone was usually a man, a breadwinner. So the consequences for the city were devastating. And this is the only pub that has claimed the name of the Titanic, and literally the only commerce that you would see in all of Southampton claiming any relationship to this, because, you know, there is still a lot of people who had family, friends, grandparents, great-grandparents, you know, someone that was part of the disaster. And, you know, the trauma in the city is still very, very much alive. So that's why we have a huge exhibition for the Titanic. And that's the reason why I would like to make sure that more people know about the importance the Titanic had for the city of Southampton. You know, it may have been built in Belfast, but hardly any people from Belfast died in that tragedy. It was the vast majority of it. It was just people from Southampton. But, you know, these things sometimes happen in history and in life. Right, well, we are now in St. Michael's Square. I want to show you this here. This is St. Michael's Church. It's actually the only standing medieval church in the city. And the reason why it's the only one standing is thanks to that spire. Now you'll be wondering, what the hell does the spire have to do with the survival chances of a medieval church? Well, that spire was actually what the Luftwaffe airplanes used to mark the city center of Southampton during the air raids in the Second World War. And by some miracle, even though the spire for this church was what was marking the city center, they missed it. We think it was strategic because, you know, if you're using something as a marker, why break it? But that's actually what saved the church from being destroyed. The rest of them, St. Mary's and Holyrood Church, got completely obliterated. But we're not here for St. Michael's Church today. We're here for this beautiful building here. Now, those of you who may be familiar with the history of the UK, or who may be very much into art and architecture, may be able to recognize these wooden traceries as Tudor style. And unsurprisingly, this is called Tudor House. It's it does what it says in the box, guys. But Tudor House is actually a very important monument for us here in Southampton. As you can see, it's in a very good state of preservation. It's one of the very few buildings in the city where the local authorities throw lots of money to keep in top notch. Just gonna give you here the full perpendicular, because I think it makes a really nice postcard. But yeah, it's absolutely stunning. I must say, not all of it is original, right? Keep in mind that this has been severely renovated a few times. And in fact, the interior of the building, it's mostly Georgian, so it's from the sort of late 18th century. But in the summer, it also has a recreated Tudor garden. Now it's closed right now. I'm sure you can see the sign there. But in the summer, they have the garden open, and it's honestly, if you come to Southampton sometime and want to see it in person, it's a beautiful experience. So please don't miss it out. But yeah, the reason why Tudor House is perhaps one of the most important monuments for us in the city is because A, is in such a good state of preservation, but it is the only sign that we have that the city started recovering straight after the Black Death. This was one of the very few buildings that were built after the Black Death happened here in Southampton. Like I said, we used to have a population before the plague of about 25,000. Then the plague came and it essentially cut us in more than half. We went down all the way to 8,000 inhabitants, which is not a lot of people. So as you can imagine, with lack of labor and lack of resources, buildings and making new buildings were not top priority. So the fact that Tudor House happened demonstrated that there were some changes, and those changes came through trade. So it was the impact that Italian merchants had coming back to Southampton, usually from goods from Venice, Florence, and Genoa, that started sparking more money and vitality into the city. And this building, after it was constructed, it became actually residence for the Lord Mayor of the city and a few other dignitaries. So that's what the building was for eventually. We think probably it was built as an actual residence originally, but then it became sort of like a state house, if you like. Right now, it is just it's one of our museums. It actually tells the story of Tudor House and a few other bits and bobs of the city of Southampton, mostly linked to trade, because later on in the modern times, mostly in the 17th century and the 16th century, these changes altogether, and we think it probably was some form of office or important building for some of the guilds and traders in the wool and wine market. And in fact, the building right next to it, that building that you see there with the bay windows, we think that would have been probably a wool warehouse. But there are all cellars and whatnot, which obviously would have been perfect for the storage of wine, grain, and whatnot. So that's what it would have been used in the future. And right now, it's just a museum helping us preserve the city. And that's the end of the tour, guys. I'm just gonna turn the camera now to be able to say hi, hello. So yeah, this is literally all for today. I hope you've had a wonderful time, and I hope that it's allowed you to realize that Southampton is not just a lame modern city. It's a very interesting city. It's just unfortunately full of trauma and very much destroyed. But yeah, so I'll be doing some more in-depth tours in the coming days. Tomorrow we are gonna be walking to the seafront, and we'll be talking more about Tudor House and the Mayflower. We also have a tour coming up with one of the spookiest places in Southampton, which is on Sunday. And then on Wednesday, I'll be doing a tour of the parks and monuments as well. And yeah, and oh, thank you so much, guys. You're so kind. Thank you for your words. And yes, sorry, if you didn't catch my name at the beginning of the tour, I'm Dr. Lilian Cespedes Gonzalez, but please just call me Lily. I'm not very pedantic like that, as much as I may be a historian. Like I said, I truly believe that history is for everyone. So Lily is just good. Plus, only my mom, who gets angry with me and shouts things to me in Spanish, calls me Lilian. So Lily is just great. Thank you so much. You guys have a lovely evening. And honestly, if you can, and if you have the time, please go and help out our Ukrainian tour guides, because they are having a really hard time. But I know you are all being so supportive, which is, amazing. I'm honestly at awe with all of you guys for how wonderful you've been through this time, not just for all of us guides, but for them. I genuinely know how much it matters to them. So, thank you for being awesome, and thank you for being here with us, and hopefully see you soon. Take care. Have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye.